get going.
Okay.
All right. It's time for the Billy D Experience. I'm Jeff Townsend. With me is the man, the myth, the legend, the man of many things. Just ask anybody. It's Bill DeMott. Just returned home from his homeland.
Golly. Back 40 years ago this month, I graduated high school. And
Ooh.
I walked, yes, that's right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm freaking old. 40 years ago, I graduated and I returned back to Paramus, New Jersey, home of the Spartans. And we had a great presentation for the senior classes. They got ready for prom that's coming up tomorrow, and then graduation. So it was good to be home. Went to Jersey via Georgia, had a great wrestling seminar out there Saturday in Milner, Georgia. So it was really a busy 5 days, but good to be home, man. It's just, I did this for so many years straight and never thought about it. And now you're kind of, I'm on the back end. I'm on the back nine here, and I'm sitting there going, wow, that's a long 5 days. So it's good to be home. My dogs were very happy to see me.
I'm sure. And like everybody listening, it's good to be seen. It's good to be heard. Thanks for listening.
Yes.
Thanks for telling a friend. We are back. I just shared an episode of you talking with Vince Russo. So if that was our last episode we shared. So if I start saying bro a lot today,
bro,
you know why.
Bro, let me tell you something, bro.
So, hey, you were talking about high school. I posted that high school picture of me this week.
What a great picture.
It made me realize I had hair. Like, what a great set of hair I had.
Don't take this the wrong way. You look better now. You look
But I'm losing all my hair, Bill.
No, you look great, dude. I was comparing the two pictures. I'm going, my man's aged well.
Okay. I had a guy at work. I don't know if I've said this before, but he said something about me being 40, and I was like, dude, I'm not 40. He's like, oh. I'm like, thanks, though. Anyway, Bill, so this week, we were just talking about it before we hit record. I put together a T-shirt with one of your good old, because as I dive into a lot of these Bill DeMott Experience from 7 years ago, you have this saying.
Yes.
And I had to put it on a T-shirt. So what does this saying mean to you? And like, when did it start? Because obviously it goes back.
It goes back to my early wrestling days. First started training and started to, delve deeper into the industry, and just from being coached, through high school and college and things like that. And it was always, put out there. Never more, relevant than professional wrestling, but it's do what you say what you mean, and mean what you do. And those three things, if you do them, you're going to put your head down at night and sleep well. As long, it's kind of like, that's always been my, what is it called? Mantra. So, it went up in every gym I trained at. It went up in the school, in the school that I owned back in Georgia. And in the early stages of the Performance Center, there was a big banner: do what you say what you mean what you do. But you took the shirt was amazing, man. I can't wait for people to, hopefully people saw some of it, because I know you posted it. But let's get those shirts out there. I tell you, I'm in for 3 of those shirts, because I have no problem putting my mug on, my chest. So I think it's a great shirt. It's that picture's from the last Tough Enough with Stone Cold. We did a bunch of photo shoots, and that's always one of my favorite shots in the hoodie. But that phrase means a lot to me, and I kind of that's kind of like my mantra of things. So as long as you stay to that, then you don't have to worry about what you said. You don't have to worry about what you did and who you did it to, and you just status quo.
Absolutely. And just to communicate this, I have jefftshirts.com. So what I did was I obviously have T-shirts for a lot of the other content I create, but this one meant something to me because what I want to do is all the proceeds from it, obviously it's a vendor fee in the middle, but any proceeds that actually come out on the end of the purchase. I want to make sure it goes to the foundation.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I was, and just you listening, I was trying to really surprise Bill with this. And the distributor really wanted to stop me, say they needed to talk to Bill directly to get permission to get his face on the shirt. It was a whole ordeal, so I didn't exactly get to surprise you 100%, but nevertheless, I tried.
Surprised, man. I think it's awesome. I'm honored by that. I think it's great that you even thought that direction for it. So I'm excited for everybody to see it. I'm excited for people to get it, and it's really cool. That's top of my list to get done.
I'll have it in the show notes, but of course it is at jefftshirts.com/listing/Bill DeMott Experience. So if you just go to jefftshirts.com and you search for Bill, you will find it.
Nice.
And if you want to buy a bunch of my other merch when you're there, that would be sweet.
Get that too. That's right.
Anyway, so I wanted to bring
grab, right?
Yeah. Yep. So you talked about the foundation. Sounds like even when you go back home, you incorporate that in your other plans, and then you're still spreading the message. You're still fighting the battle.
Yeah, it was kind of a very cool week personally, and then foundation wise. The chief of police in Paramus Police Department, dear friend of mine, we grew up together, Kenny Ehrenberg, retired after 36 years on the force. And I say this with all due respect, retired, standing up straight, walking well and healthy. And he did great things for the town and the community and the county. And his predecessor is one of my dearest friends, who was the deputy chief. So one of his first acts as chief of police this week is when he started, was introducing the foundation to the school, during this presentation for the seniors. So it was really, it was a short visit for like family and friends, but I got to see a bunch of my peeps, and we spent some time together. And then, as always, just, dropping the knowledge and spreading the message and the mission. It really was a good trip all the way around. And I got to give a quick shout out to Hope Wrestling in Milner, Georgia. There's a lot of shows around the country and people, independents, and doing their thing, but these guys really focus on faith and how they conduct themselves as, aspiring pro wrestlers and doing those things. So I really appreciate getting to share a little bit of my testimony with them during the training camp. And then they had a great message prior to the show. And it's really just, it's cool to see that out there. It's a different time. It's a different energy. It's a different direction. But shout out to Hope Wrestling and Marty Miller and those guys out there. They're doing a great job. I was honored to be there. I really had a good time. It's like you and I, when we record these episodes, my mind thinks wrestling. So the whole trip up to Jersey, wrestling, and then I got to Jersey and foundation, and now I'm home and it's wrestling.
Life can be such a humbling experience.
Yeah, man.
So other sad news, and I know a couple people commented on it, wanted you to hear about the Iron Sheik passing away now.
Yeah.
Now, okay, so Iron Sheik, and I'm on Twitter quite a bit, as are you. This guy, aside from all of his wrestling, which we're going to talk, we'll get into a little bit, his presence on Twitter for over a decade has been insane. Going at Chris Brown, just the things that with Howard Stern, he's just outside of wrestling. Even he's become such a cool, like a figure, and outside of wrestling, even that character, which is so stuck in time, that's not going to come back again.
No,
I don't think so. And it's just, he's made this whole life after wrestling off of it. Obviously not getting near the cut of money that people do these days.
Right.
But man, talk about just an amazing character itself, the Iron Sheik.
Yeah. He was he's like a cult figure. He transcended, wrestling, to me, it's like the same. Terry Funk's like that way.
Yeah.
There's certain guys and characters that transcend the industry. And the funny part, especially on Twitter, like, I mean, he made no bones about speaking his mind or saying what he wanted to say. So every F-bomb in the world and everybody was a jabroni and all these things. But what a cool, it was a cool time. I was one of those guys in that group who had a chance to spend time with him. I'd never worked in the ring with him. I'd been on the same shows. I have a funny story about Sheik when I first started wrestling. If we have time to share it, I'll do that.
Yeah.
I was, greener than goose turds, and we went to a SD Jones, Special Delivery Jones, and this cat, Mr. Haiti, put this tour together to the Cayman Islands. So they brought a bunch of us young, we were green, like hitting the ropes and,
Yeah.
you could take bumps, but that was it. You didn't know much, but he took all of us from New York, and on the card was JYD and Sheik, and, SD was there and a couple other people. And it's funny because we couldn't find him. It was showed that we spent 3 days in the Cayman Islands. We worked 20 minutes. So, you let a bunch of wrestlers out in the Cayman Islands and everything's on the house and you're on the beach and all this stuff. Well, you can't find him. So they send me, one of the young guys to go find him. Knock on his door. Nothing. Knock on his door. Just a minute. And okay, come in. And he's sitting in the middle of the room, surrounded by candles. And I don't even know how to address him, right? Because I didn't know him well enough to call him Sheiky or anything like that. I'm like, sir, they're waiting for just a minute, jabroni. And he sat there for a couple more minutes. He kind of was meditating, if you know what I mean, doing his thing. And when he was ready, he got up and we just walked, got to the ride that was there first. So we went, but I don't think he changed. There was no change in demeanor. Like he's that guy. I thought they did a great job on the documentary they did of his life story and everything. And, but he had a lot to offer, he, truly one of the industry's natural bad guys. I mean, just a heat magnet.
Heat magnet. But here's the thing. I think he also, if you look back at it now, you realize that wrestling doesn't need to be so damn complicated.
Yeah.
And that's an era that really just showed that. It was taking concepts from reality and putting it into a entertainment aspect.
Yeah.
And he was just a part of that, really a time when we weren't as worried about the ratings of the matches or setting up spots. It was really storytelling.
Yeah.
And I just think it's a cool time in wrestling history that he was a big part of.
Yeah, and as you read the stories and some of the stories that the veterans are telling and stuff, but historically, there's no Hulk Hogan without Sheik. That night in the Garden made Hulk Hogan who he was. There had to be a guy, a bigger babyface than he was a villain. And Sheik made him that guy. I urge everyone who's listening and everybody who catches this stuff, I urge you to go listen to and watch his Hall of Fame speech. So entertaining. Like everything that's good in the world of wrestling happens in that speech. Like he's who he is. He's entertaining. He's sharing life, and you could tell how grateful and humble he is by the whole thing. But Sheik all the way through to the end, and it's truly a sad. I think it's sad when, I hate to use it to like when the old timers, start to pass on, but really good guy. I'm glad he was alive to see how that documentary turned out. Really happy for him personally that he got to start to, make amends with his family and his daughters and things like that. So, I hope that he was in a really good place at the time of his passing. But yeah, what a big character and a big part of this industry. And you're right, it was a simpler time. It was easy. It was Cowboys and Indians, man. It was like, let's just go out and tell this story so simple and not one triple Indy.
Heck of an athlete, Olympic, right? Weightlifting and yeah, heck of an athlete too. So it was really an opposing figure as well. And when you have him and Hulk Hogan, like you said, those are times that are just going to be etched in stone forever. I actually did share a clip of that, him making Hulk Hogan humble, as I said. But obviously Hogan has a comeback, and then there's the rest is history, like always. Then Hogan must pose. Hogan must pose. Did you ever heard that Vince said that all the time?
Yeah.
Yeah, listening to Bruce Pritchard's podcast, he said that it always came down to Vince would say, Hogan must pose. But yeah, big part of Hulk Hogan's putting him over, I guess, in wrestling terms.
Well, did you see in the documentary when they told the story how Vern Gagne told him, like, break his leg, break his knee, come back and work for me. The hell with this guy. And Sheik being loyal to his coach, which was Gagne, but telling him, like, McMahon's treating me well and I have to do business. And so to hear those stories, like, that's the part that people really need to watch and go. People who think they have this business figured out have no idea the way these guys laid it out for us, before we got into it. So really, really cool stuff, man.
Speaking of which, we'll get to some listener questions on the back end of this. We're talking about history, Bill. And like we've been talking about, I'm sure this will be a multi-parter, but today I wanted to kick it off talking about the WWE it's WWE now, but overall the United States Championship.
Yeah.
Obviously you've held the title. It's one of your favorites. So I'm excited to talk about that a little bit today. Just real quick, what do you remember as a fan before you got into it about this title and the meaning of it?
I'm from being from the Northeast, everything was WWF, but we didn't get, like, when we finally got cable. That's right. When I said we finally got cable, it was always on, you could catch, TBS, and it was, wrestling from down south. So the belts, the championships at that time didn't really resonate with me, and I didn't really follow all of the, hullabaloo around it. For me, WWF wise, the Intercontinental Championship to me was just as big as the World Championship. Though back then they treated it that way, So when all these, and then WCW, you had a TV champion, and then so everything started to water down a little bit because you had to have all these champions to justify. But back then, I feel like you had them because you had all these studs, and you could justify each one of these championships, tag teams and Intercontinental and US and TV champions and all these things. So I thought it was like, if you didn't think about becoming a champion when you got in this business, you were nuts. I mean, naturally, I thought, okay, independently, I could become a champion of one of these independents. But then, became a champion in Puerto Rico and became a champion in Japan and going to all these things. So when I had the opportunity to get involved in the history of, WCW with the United States Championship, I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Like, that's Buzz Sawyer territory. That's Barry Windham territory. That's all these guys that came before. So I think that's when I really started to understand the history of who came before me. That's when the titles meant more to me. Even as a fan, even being in the business, but as a fan, they meant more to me. And I wanted to, wow, that, Harley raced this and all these guys and it did amazing things. And to be able to say you joined that group of men for no matter what length of time is really, for whatever people think of this business, that really means a lot to the performers, to the wrestlers. It really, I can't speak for now because I'm sure it does, but I think everybody, like, that's the thing. You could not really treat it in front of people like a big thing. Like, I promise you, I held tight to that. I thought it was the best thing. Every opportunity I had to become a champion somewhere, I treated it like that. Like, this is it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's to me, it's one of those things. Obviously, didn't watch wrestling as early as you did, but it's one of those things where it's always been there. You know what I mean? There's a period of time, I guess, when it wasn't, but nevertheless, it's been there from really when wrestling. Obviously pro wrestling's been along long before.
Yeah.
But the territory days, this thing was significant. And you said the name of the first guy that held it, right? I mean, it was Harley Race. January 1st, 1975, they introduced it. This was in Jim Crockett's Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling.
Yeah.
It was the territory, like I just said, part of the NWA. He became the first champion. And word is, after he won a tournament, now it's funny enough because some people actually say that there's a name of who he beat, but they don't really know the tournament. So it's kind of like the Pat Patterson story
With the Intercontinental,
like the championship, how he won it, and but man, we'll talk about just the first person to have it, Harley Race. That says a lot.
And to get to, fast forward towards the training part of my career and running the systems and all, to have Harley coming into the camps and spending days with us and talking, like, nobody was picking his brain about the current thing. Everybody wanted to just sit around the tree and listen to the business as it was and learn from him and that. And, Harley was always very open to those conversations. It wasn't like, oh, get away from me, kid. I can't tell you, like, because everybody respected him and did it the right way. But like for guys like me, like I can say I'm in that group of people. And as the group gets bigger, I still look at that group and go, what a unbelievable. And we're talking about the United States. Every championship has an amazing lineage, but I really thought it was so cool and just, kind of like that pinch me thing of, if you go down the names, you look and you go, holy crap, there I am right next to this one, and naturally didn't come close to doing what Harley did with it, but just to be able to sit and talk to them and then develop that friendship with them later on has just been really cool, man.
So the individual he defeated was Johnny Weaver.
Johnny Weaver.
Commentator, obviously former professional wrestler. It was Johnny Weaver. And there's another thing cool about this title. So at the time, the NWA didn't recognize a sole champion due to every region having their own United States title. So this was actually established as an exclusive NWA United States Heavyweight Championship. That's pretty cool too.
Yeah,
it was their way of saying, "Hey, this is our title," because back then there was a lot of traveling champions.
Yeah,
like we said, territories, obviously champions traveled, etc. It was like a shared experience.
Yeah.
Oh boy, that changed by about the time you got in there. But nevertheless, this was NWA's like, this is ours. This is our heavyweight championship.
Yeah, they put their stamp on it, and yeah, they made it matter. They made it mean something.
Yeah, and this is this is actually, as we continue, and we've talked about this, Bill, to introduce new championships.
Yeah,
we've seen two of them. Excuse me, the gnat flying around. Two of them introduced in the last couple weeks. The unexpected Roman Reigns one, which I didn't see coming until it happened. And then, of course, we've seen Seth Rollins as he gets the Raw title that they created. Right. But this was big for them then because this is what they had. And
yet you had to earn that opportunity. You had to earn that spot to work with guys of that caliber, and to build, you had to have a reputation, to be that champion and to hold that belt and be the carrier of that title. I mean, it's definitely, as the business has changed, the whole mentality's changed. But back then, like, you didn't just go, oh yeah, he's the United States champion. No, that was it, dude. That was like, you were the man. And that's the one, because of Harley and the people that followed him, that's the one that everybody wanted. I think, I personally think there was a time when the U.S. championship was more sought after by the guys than the world championship, because back then, let's say, fast forward to when you had Flair as the world heavyweight champion. Flair was Flair, and you had a certain group of people that were in that caliber to run with Rick, but that United States one made it to where if you worked up to it, you could run, but you had to have that reputation, you had to have that thing about you, and you had to be worth even being in the picture. And I don't mean to say it's different, but nowadays, all of a sudden someone's a number one contender, and that's it. No, you had to work the road on that and prove your worth to even get in the conversation. And back then, the champions had a lot to say of who they wouldn't work with, or who they would or wouldn't put over or allow to carry that championship. So I think they were all like that. I think initially they were all very meaningful, and there had to be more than just, okay, an opportunity. You had to work for that.
Yeah. So, Bill, the second champions, actually, it comes 183 days after Harley Race wins it in Tallahassee, Florida. It's Johnny Valentine. He gets this in Greensboro, North Carolina. It's July 3rd, 1975. Man, Johnny Valentine, that's...
Oh, you froze up on me.
That's
another
big name.
Is that me?
Can you hear me?
Yep. Nope, it's you. Am I there? Hello? Are you there?
Can you hear me?
I think he's there. I know he's there. Somewhere is my man Jeff. Hello? 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 I feel like am I talking to myself? I do that a lot. I don't see him. Going once. Going twice. Going. I don't know where you are. Well, anyway, if I think he's recording, so I'm going to get back to this. As we talk about this championship, and when Jeff comes on, we'll pick it up again. But I think what's really, really important is and Jeff started to touch on it before we lost him, is the time frame in which these championships were held for. The amount of time, 183 days.
Yeah, lost the internet connection, man. I don't know what happened.
That's all right. I was still covering where I was following up on your 183 days and the importance.
So interesting enough, this is a big event here. He holds this for 183 days. Johnny Valentine wins it on July 3rd in a house show in Greensboro, North Carolina. Johnny Valentine. That's what I said, right? Just making sure. That's huge, man. Johnny Valentine. Obviously, this is a short-lived run for him, and this was at the very end for Johnny Valentine, because actually what happened was, and most people listening have probably heard of that, there was a plane crash, right? Ric Flair was on there, David Crockett, Tim Woods, and what was it, Bob Burgers. But anyway, that is just, the plane crash is just tragic enough, right? With too much weight in the plane, I believe. And this is a career-ending injury for him, that he suffers from this.
Yeah. How long did he actually hold how did he get credited for holding the title for?
It was, what did I just say? Was it 83? Yeah.
Like 83 days. And then
93 days. Yep. And it was done after that, Bill. Right? That crash happened on October 4th, and he got it on July 3rd.
Yeah.
Obviously, we hear about this crash a lot because of Ric Flair.
Yep.
Yeah, and he was done, man. So then the title's actually vacated. That's a career-ending spinal injury for him. Just tragic. Another great wrestler. Yep. And so the title goes vacant, and they have a tournament for the championship. And then, well, man, one of my favorite wrestlers is actually going to be the third champion. So November 9th, it goes vacant for about a month. Terry Funk beats Paul Jones in a tournament final to win the championship. Terry Funk, man.
Like, say no more. Like, you could say Terry Funk, and we could all just sit and think of our favorite Funk moments and things like that. But it goes back to what I said in the beginning. Like, listen to the three men you just mentioned. That was the cool part for me. That was the history of it. And like, they didn't just put it on like, well, let's put it on Terry Funk because no. These guys were carrying this thing like, it was Fort Knox, and they all meant, they all made it mean something. And so going back to that term of things are a little bit watered down, then United States champion held a lot of stroke and a lot of weight in this industry. And the people treated it that way because the athletes, the men treated it that way.
We do have some younger listeners of this podcast. If you just started watching wrestling around the Attitude Era, you probably don't really realize how great Terry Funk was and the amazing matches that he had going back beyond 20 years before that. Terry Funk comes in as just a hardcore character, does some great stuff with Mick Foley. But man, if you didn't watch before or haven't gone back and checked stuff out, Terry Funk was a part of amazing matches with the likes of Jerry Lawler. I guess my point is, so many different territories Terry Funk would go into and have the famous 5-star matches. But man, Terry Funk is one of the best ever. And you just don't know that unless you watch before then.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are introduced to Terry Funk at Roadhouse. Right? Because he did movies and things like that. But people go, oh, Terry Funk, the guy from Roadhouse? And you want to go, no. Terry Funk. Like the Funk family. Now, Terry, I've had opportunities to work with him dozens and dozens of times. And again, it's one of those things like you're a little kid going, this is the coolest thing in the world. Like, I'm picking Terry Funk up and I'm about to, beat the crap out of him. But just the things he can do, his knowledge, and there it is, the clout to carry that. They never put it, and I don't want to say put it like they just decided to put on someone. No one ever carried that title or any of the titles back in the day that weren't worthy. And they didn't, it was always someone they thought would make it mean more than the guy previous. And I think that's what they were, that's what was happening back then. I think that a little bit of that's lost nowadays, but the business, go to it, the business has changed. But you went from Harley Race to Johnny Valentine and we're Terry Funk. Jeez, Lou. Now it's intimidating to.
Yeah, when you really start thinking about this, Bill, it's
now you're going to be running.
It's crazy when you think about what the title became post, and just where it's like everything else where they begin. It's really humbling, and like I said, Terry Funk, not just a hardcore guy either.
Yeah,
these matches we're talking about right now, they weren't some death matches, Bill.
He can work. Yeah. And the history of the Funks in Japan and the things that they did over there, like, people need to watch that. Like I always said that about Hogan, not to split off into a different thing, but Hogan in Japan worked differently than Hogan in the States. And the Funk, Dory and Senior and Junior, all the Funks did was gold, and they were men, and they could wrestle, they could go. So this is this is a hell of a.
It is. So
we're talking about here.
Terry Funk wins a championship, like we just said. It only lasts for a couple weeks here. I think it was 19 days recognized. So this is what happens now. Paul Jones defeats him. So he defeated Paul Jones, as we just covered, to get the title. Paul Jones defeats him. And what this sets up, Bill, is about a year and a half rival between Paul Jones and Blackjack Mulligan, where they exchange wins back and forwards over this title. A story that goes on over a year and a half. Looking at it, it's multiple title changes, Bill. So we have Paul Jones, and then another name that it's just like Blackjack Mulligan, man. And that's just, these are huge names. And this is all happening, by the way, in the Carolinas.
Yeah. Right. And it's not happening on pay-per-view events. It's not happening in, 25,000 seat arenas. These are live events, and it's on the road. A year and a half story. And nowadays you talk about, well, now this guy's got the title. This guy, they didn't just pass it back and forth. That's a year and a half story. And I've been in those situations, like especially with the U.S. title thing. And we were talking a little bit about Lance Storm and my relationship with him. To have that kind of run just solidifies the championship and solidifies those two men. And that was the thing. Even when you weren't the champion after that, you were made. If you were in those storylines and you were in that grouping and you were considered to be someone to carry that title, you were made after that. So you didn't need to be, you always hear people say, well, that person doesn't need to have a championship. They are who they are. But back then, if you carried that and you had that, on your resume, you were made. And they were all great.
But again, this is the NWA title. This is the NWA title. So it is staying here in the same location, and it's being defended. We have a year and a half rival here, like we just talked about. Blackjack Mulligan. So I'm going to let you, for a minute, describe him and how it relates to wrestlers these days, and some things that people might not know as far as current wrestlers that are related.
I think if you took, you'd have to build the perfect Blackjack, right? I mean, he was, for those who are listening, I understand, you take Stan Hansen and you take JBL and you take Bart Gunn and you take Terry Funk and you take you could name, and you put them all into one. Blackjack Mulligan had a presence. Bruiser Brody, these men built like that. And you didn't just call someone Blackjack Mulligan and hopefully he was a badass or someone that could carry that moniker. This guy was a monster, but he was a machine. And then so him and Jack Lanza together as the Blackjacks. Jack Lanza, another big imposing force, but could wrestle. So anyway, the lineage of Blackjack Mulligan, you have Barry Windham.
Kendall Windham, yeah.
Right? You have Kendall Windham. You have Bo Dallas. You have Husky Harris. You have all these generational talents, and it's just they learned it from being young and watching what the olders did. But Blackjack, and I had a great opportunity with Jack Lanza for years. He was my agent, and just the knowledge and the idea of this is how simple it can be, boys, and just follow this formula. But again, I'm always going to go back to they made it matter, and they treated it that way. They didn't go, oh, it's just a thing, and let's just have a good match and did it. No, they walked it, and they showed it, and they demanded that respect of being that champion. But Blackjack was a beast, in a time when, like they say, men were men. There was no, and 2 beers and a cigarette and let's fight.
Yeah,
that's the kind of that's the kind of men they were.
Mike Rotunda, obviously, as we're going through here, Mike Rotunda, IRS, another great wrestler. Then his sons were Bo Dallas and Bray Wyatt. So Grandpa Blackjack Mulligan, He actually, going back before this, he had quite a great run in the WWF in the early 70s. As you probably remember, the Iron Claw submission hold. I love that. I love that. So,
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, with the glove, right? That was the whole thing. With
It was
the glove.
black. I think it was black fingerless glove. Yeah.
And,
Yes.
Yep, black fingerless glove. And that's why you saw so many guys pay tribute to it over the years. And, even his family members. Barry wore it at one time. Kendall wore it. Bo wore it. Wyndham wore it. I'm not sure if Mike ever wore the glove, but these are not, just for the sake of argument, these men in this family were not to toy with. They were all great amateur athletes.
Yeah.
And professional.
So
athletes.
When he gets done with this, fast forward a few years, he's really having he's having matches in Madison Square Garden with Bruno. He goes on this feud with Andre the Giant and Blackjack Mulligan. He's 6'9", 300 pounds, Bill. He is a big, imposing guy. Then he is teaming up with Ric Flair. He really went on after this, after he was already in the industry for a while and had a great run here in the end. But like I said, I do remember the Andre the Giant things. And Andre the Giant, I think he actually said that, I remember him saying his strength had no limits. He was talking, he being Andre the Giant. He was talking about Andre the Giant. But I remember those matches, and as far as being an opposing character, Blackjack Mulligan was really one of the very few that he goes up against Andre, and you're like, Andre's still way bigger, but he's a big guy, and they did some good stuff.
Yeah. Like he could beat him, and but it goes back to the type of person he was, not just athlete, because, and I know you've heard the stories, and people that are truly wrestling fanatics, you hear the stories like, if Andre didn't want to do something, Andre didn't do it. But if you were that kind of person and had that quality about you and could carry it, you'd have some great matches with him. And
after a year and a half with Blackjack and Paul Jones having great matches, Blackjack Mulligan loses the title to, and this I'm not as familiar with, Bobo Brazil. And the thing that I didn't necessarily tie into this title, but I do remember he is significant because he is really known for breaking down the barriers of racism in professional wrestling. So the title's passed over here, and Bobo is breaking down barriers. So again, you have this United States Championship in a time when America's really civil rights are still battling. We do still, but nevertheless, significant person in the professional wrestling industry.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm not mistaken, Bobo Brazil is probably one, if not the first, one of the first African-American athletes to hold that. Not just that title, any title. And especially, we're talking about NWA, and in the South, there was still, whites change here, blacks change here, this one does here, you can't eat there. And you hear those stories throughout your career, if you're lucky to get educated on those stories, you know what I mean? But Bobo Brazil, I don't think a lot of people tie him into that.
Yeah, he's actually quoted as really being significant because of that. Especially, he's recognized as one of the first successful black professional wrestlers, which is significant. 22-day title reign, then loses it to Rick Flair in Richmond, Virginia on July 29th, 1977. And oh boy, Bill. So Ric Flair wins this title. He has it for 84 days and he drops it to Ricky Steamboat. This is the start, and this goes, there's some breaks in between, Bill, but this really starts a great series of matches that Steamboat and Flair have throughout the years. So Ric Flair picks it up, and he then Steamboat is the next. But man, talk about the beginning of something special, and we're going to see more of a trend here. And Blackjack Mulligan wins the title again. Then he drops it to Mr. Wrestling. Is Tim Woods, I believe, is his name, is the other name I remember him going by. Yeah. But man, right after that, it becomes a huge Ric Flair, Ricky Steamboat thing that goes clear into the end of the 70s. So really, these couple years here are Ric Flair, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat having these matches for this significant championship.
Which to your point, as we keep going forward with this, neither one of them has it at the times of a lot of their bouts. They were made, and then you listen. There's a lot of people who say the best rivalries in wrestling, and Flair Steamboat. I mean, you go Flair Steamboat, Flair Rhodes, Steamboat Savage. Whoever they touched and locked up with became gold. But that's because they had the opportunity to stay and dance with that guy all over the country. Like, they were drawing so much that other promoters, to your point of the territories, well, we have to have them. They're drawing you that kind of, we have to have them. And so they made their rounds. But what, to me, then, like you said, Blackjack came back into the picture, and they meant something when they were back in the picture. And those were the people that carried that, But Flair Steamboat, I mean, if you don't watch anything else, you want to go learn about wrestling back in the day, watch all Flair
actually,
Steamboat.
Bill,
and try to steal from it, because you can't.
These are matches that Dave Meltzer actually gave 5 stars. I know. What? They're not as good as the AEW matches, but they were great. Okay, no. I'm just getting you all fired up now. But seriously, though, amazing matches that you have to go back and watch. And as far as establishing Ric Flair as a significant champion here, man, he goes on 253-day title reign. He goes on 140-day title reign. He is really becoming a big name here in this territory, Ric Flair. He is. So, go ahead.
And, yeah. No, I was going to say, and finding himself more and more as he continues on these runs and realizes not only what the championship can do for him, what he can do for the championship. And
it's the predecessor right after this are over 10 great years of Ric Flair as the heavy NWA champion. Just amazing years of pro wrestling filled with amazing matches. This is starting to tail off here because there is a big change coming and we're going to hit it. Yeah. But the next to get it is Jimmy Snuka. He defeats Ric Flair in a house show in September 1st, 1979. Man, that's Jimmy Snuka, man. He comes into the picture here and gets involved. Obviously, people, you think of Jimmy Snuka, you think of post that, you think of WWF, but he's involved with this too. Talk about another huge Hall of Fame name.
That early on in his career never spoke. He was getting over with his physique, his mannerisms, the bare feet, the whole island thing, but he never spoke. He did all of that before he became Jimmy. But I think it goes back to that thing, and I guess that's my thread throughout the whole thing. This championship, this United States championship, made these men who they are and who they would become, because it was important. If you were in that picture, you had to be someone as a fan. I need to know more about you. I have to watch you because now you're the United States champion, and you went with Flair before, and it was Steamboat and it was Harley and it was all these guys, and it wasn't Frank and Pete and Bob. It was Jimmy Snuka. And they all became, I feel like they all became more relevant after their runs as United States champion. Because
that's what
how many of them went on to become world champion?
This is really a career-building thing for these guys. And Ric Flair is going to get the title back from him and goes on another 100. Okay, so Jimmy Snuka had it 233 days, which is these days, that's a crazy long time. Ric Flair has another 100-day reign before he loses to Greg Valentine on July 26, 1980. Greg the Hammer Valentine. And, of course, who's his father? Yep. So,
Johnny Valentine.
Yeah. Think about that. We just talked about that. So, Greg the Hammer gets this. After this, the title goes through a little bit of change here, and we'll talk about that. But Greg the Hammer, man, another great name. He gets it from Ric Flair, and there's a history there, obviously, with Johnny Valentine. And how cool is that?
Yep. It's and you know we're trying to stay, and well, I say this, you're trying to stay on the United States Championship history, but I keep going like, look what these guys have done after the fact. Like it's a as you're saying it again, I'm sitting there going, wow, because you think of them as so much, and it's not to belittle the championship at all, but you think of them as so much more than a United States champion based on how it's perceived today. But these guys are amazing. And to go full circle, father to son, it goes to the history of this business. There's relevance. There's meaning behind it. It wasn't just like, okay, you know what? Let's take Bill and let's put Jeff together and one of them becomes the number one contender. It didn't work that way. You had to work your way up the ranks, prove your worth, be roadworthy, you know, and do your thing. So
I know.
Greg Valentine, man. Another guy who could go, but was a ruffian too.
So man, it just gets crazier from here. This is just exciting to me. Obviously, the title loses some flair. It's not Ric Flair, but it does. But it loses some significance throughout history. But here's the thing. So the next, you're going to have Ric Flair. He wins it back, okay? And this is a little bit of a controversial one because it's not always recognized in a lot of historical wrestling references. This is the last title reign before this. So Roddy Piper is going to beat Ric Flair. Roddy Piper, is going to become the champion on January 27th, 1981. And this is significant because what happens here is the United States Championship was, I'm trying to think of how to really describe this here. It became the undisputed championship because the NWA office that I think it was out of San Francisco, the last promotion to be recognized as its own territory, closed. So this is the moment in time here. In part, this title is part of the passing of the torch of the death of the territories, and it becomes more. Right. It's undisputed, and Roddy Piper, which is another insane name, but this title actually goes through a change here, Bill, because it's undisputed now. Last remaining territory is gone. So NWA utilizing this Mid-Atlantic, it's those days are over. All the history before it. Then you have Roddy Piper pick it up here. It's kind of the second generation of this championship after this change happened. So I just touch up on two big things. You have the territory closing down, and then this title moves on through history. But like I said, to me, this is the second part two of this championship.
Right. Now there's a different breadth of it too. There's a different level to it. And knowing that the territories were fading out, and like you said, the San Francisco closing, that's the thing. Like, who's going to carry this undisputed title? And they put it on, of all people,
and
Piper.
We could go down rabbit holes with all these guys, but man, talk about a great.
Jeez, Lou, man. It's just like, this is what you do to me. You bring me back to why I love this business. Like and the funny thing is, you and I are talking about this, and this is the same. These are the conversations that I miss in the locker room after all the years. You know, you have camaraderie, but when you can sit with a bunch of guys, even on a car ride, when I'm riding with Haku and, you know, Boss Man and One Man Gang, and we're sitting there, these four behemoths, and we're talking about the history of the business. That's when I learned. That's when I fell in love with the thing that was paying me to become this person. So I'm just enjoying the trip down the history here, but that's huge when you put it like that. It's like the territories are ending, but this title reign is now a new beginning, right? Now it's going to have more eyes on it. It's going to have a whole different set of eyes, as part of the country too, because
it's huge, Bill. And this is also Ric Flair's absence of 15 years before he wins the title next, I believe. We're setting the stage here, like you just said. This is a whole other generation of people, so let's dive into it. Man, so Roddy Piper holds it for 193 days, and he loses to Wahoo McDaniel August 8th, 1981, and man, Mr. McDaniel became a huge connection to this belt for several years to come.
You sit like I hope the people that are listening turn other people on to this and listen to what you're bringing to the table here. I'm sitting here listening as a fan, and I'm watching. We're recapping this, and you're like, okay, wait a minute.
Yeah.
We've talked about Harley Race, Blackjack, Snuka, Bobo Brazil, history-making moments, Steamboat, all these things. Now we're talking about Flair, and we're talking about all these things. And now you're seeing Roddy Piper. And then we're going, well, it doesn't get bigger than that because we know Flair will come back and get it and these things.
Because Piper moves on to bigger and better things. Let's acknowledge that. What Piper does after this is freaking huge. But... well, Wahoo McDaniel, he really legitimized this title once again. You see a lot of people coming and going here as the territories are dying. But he has a run here with this that is significant.
He was a fighting champion. Like Wahoo McDaniel was a meat and potatoes guy. And again, it goes back to his amateur days, his professional days outside of wrestling and who he was. But I can't believe the names are getting, and they're going to get bigger still. But you look at the names we've talked about in a short amount of time, and I'm
Bill,
it
gets crazier.
So easy we could do this.
So
again.
This is exactly not the most successful title reign he had. He held the title 5 times. Wahoo actually goes about a month, Bill. Then he gets injured by Abdul the Butcher, and he has to vacate the title. Man, Abdul the Butcher, Bill. Put him out of action.
Does anybody realize what? Again, it's generational, but to these guys who hear Abdullah the Butcher, go back and watch and learn the people he's danced with and the things he's done and why he is in the Hall of Fame and why he is, his reputation is what it is. The names just keep getting ridiculous here. And there's no, and I'll try to throw a little humor. There's no really backsliding on this championship till I get it.
Otherwise, Bill, it gets bigger. It gets bigger next, brother. It does. So, like I said, so don't get me wrong. Abdul the Butcher did not win the title. He was just injured by him. So again, we're going to have a championship
out Wahoo McDaniel.
Okay. Comes down to the finals, October 4th, 1981.
And that's
Ricky Steamboat and Sergeant Slaughter. Sergeant Slaughter comes up with a victory and has a 229-day title run. And man, but here's the great thing about it, Bill. And we'll talk about Sergeant Slaughter, but
Wahoo doesn't go on to story. They vacate the title.
And we'll have several months of great matches with Sergeant Slaughter after this. Yeah, I had to get you back in the room there. That was weird.
Yeah, I saw. I was.
Anyway, yeah, Sergeant Slaughter, man.
Yeah. I'm in a trance by all this stuff.
We just talked about Iron Sheik.
What? You're dropping the biggest. Till this day, you're still dropping the names in history that are still relevant today. And for people that are listening and catching up to what we do, we're talking about the United States Championship. we're going to get eventually, one of these episodes, we're going to get to Austin Theory. Austin Theory should be listening to this show going, and he's a student of the game, so don't get me wrong, but he should be going, holy crap. Like, I want to know now.
It's crazy.
I got goosebumps. It's wrestling, right? I want to know now, like, I want to go back in and try to emulate what they did, not what I did. I want to, it's wrestling history, and it goes, and I feel like now we're talking about guys who are bringing the title with them. Instead of the title bringing them, they're bringing the title with them.
So, Sergeant Slaughter has a 229-day run here. Then Wahoo McDaniel's able to come up with the victory on May 21st, 1982. He holds it for 18 days. Then another house show. Poor Wahoo McDaniel. Okay, so he was injured by Don Maraca. Roddy Piper before the match is the thing here. Then Sergeant Slaughter gets a 76-day run again. And coming into August, the end of the summer, he has a match against Wahoo McDaniel again, and he comes up with a victory. So, like I just said, this was a year of Wahoo McDaniel and Sergeant Slaughter going after this title. Some of it's a work when I'm talking injuries here, by the way.
And no matter who when they insert another name, the other guys are still in the mix. And that was the beauty part about it, was it wasn't just once you lost it or relinquished it or got hurt, you were out of it. You were back in. Like, this is significant in the business. This is when you knew your work and everything resonated with this industry and your bosses and the fans, because, you know, they welcome you right back because these were, listen, like you're saying 193 days, 200 and something days. Like, these are unheard of numbers and unheard of time spans of championships and what it means, you know. And not one time have we talked about a world heavyweight champ. We know they've all become world heavyweight champions, some of them, most of them, in some place in time, but we're stuck in this U.S. championship. But to me, it's like what we're just saying. Now they're bringing the championship along with them, and people are gravitating to it. It really, these are some of the best feuds.
Yeah,
in
well said, Bill. I can't explain it anyway. I'm getting red in the face. I'm getting so damn excited here, Bill. Could be that I turned off the air conditioner too, so you didn't have background noise. But I am getting excited, Bill. I am. Wow. So that's not the last of Wahoo McDaniel, by the way, with the title. So he's going to drop, and it's not the last, like I just said. Greg Valentine gets back in the picture on November 4th, 1982, picks up the victory, has a 163-day title ring, and then again, so we just had this year-long battle here with the other two. Now let's rotate in a new storyline here with Roddy Piper and Greg Valentine having these matches for this title from the fall of 1982 clear into almost the summer of 83 with Piper and Greg Valentine. So Greg Valentine, like I just said, gets up the win. Piper gets the win. Valentine gets the win. And they have almost a year-long rival here with this title. Obviously, a lot of things happen in between, but this title and them go at it back and forth for nearly a year.
Right. Yeah, and because you could leave it, introduce new characters, introduce new personas, and still come back to the meat and potatoes of the whole thing. That's how strong these guys were over. This is their work rate and what they did for themselves as individuals and the company. And, you know, the people they were working for was, like you said, you could just keep inserting them at any given time. But this is another year-long feud. And highly underrated feud too, Piper Valentine. Like, I encourage people, and we talk about it a lot, I encourage everybody who listens and talks wrestling with their buds and whoever else, other fans and people who love the business, go watch Piper Valentine feuds. I mean, they're some great stuff. And so not only are we talking about this U.S. championship.
So Valentine won the title against Piper here on his reign. We're talking. Piper had this terrible cut over his ear. I'm remembering just the blood involved with that. And the story is the ref stops the match. Okay. So then Greg Valentine, 229 days, and Dick Slater defeats him for the championship on December 14th, 1983 in a house show still in North Carolina. Dick Slater. Dirty Dick Slater.
Dirty Dick Slater.
What's his name? Rich? Wasn't his name Rich Van Slater?
I went up and down the road.
That's his actual, that was his name, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I went up and down the road with Dirty Dick a lot. We spent a lot of time in Japan towards the end of his, active career. But the other thing that really is important to me is and you're putting great emphasis on it, is that these title reigns are changing at live events. And even in the early 80s, unless you knew someone, you had to wait for the tapes, or you had the magazines were what was telling you the stories. So imagine the work they're doing in the storytelling that's in magazines and working on the VHS stuff, but they're doing it in live events all over the country now. So that's drawing. Vince
McMahon hadn't got his claws dug into the pay-per-view scene yet, which revolutionized wrestling. You're right, Bill. These are house shows, man. This is happening. Could you imagine being in the audience for this?
Yeah. No, nowadays you'd never see it happen. It happened years ago. I don't know what year. The first time Epico and Primo became tag team champions, we did it at a live event just to shake things up on the internet, and then going into the next Raw. So it's not something that's done anymore, and it's kind of just frowned upon. They want to save it for TV. These guys were doing it with magazine coverage, no TV, and really rebuilding the territories that were shut down. They're going in there reviving wrestling for everybody.
What's happening here behind the scenes in the world, in America, we'll say, is cable networks. So all this is really starting to strum up here as we get into the early 80s, and it obviously changes things. But this is still we'll just say, dying territory, if you want to call it that. And these are happening at house shows, like you just said. But yeah, cable is starting to become something at this time period, and it will change things. And we'll get into that. But I did want to note that for people listening that may not understand, that television's really starting to come around now, and it's going to change things. But old-fashioned house shows are still what's happening here and keeping this championship great.
Yeah, I mean the reason it took off, and again, I'm trying not to drift, but the reason it took off with cable is because I wanted, I'm speaking for myself, the guys on the magazine covers and the stories I was reading, and the blood and the championships and all these things. Now I get to see it on TV. That drew me to that product. It made not only did it take the wrestling fan, it took the wrestling fan's family, his friends. It got people involved, because now there's proof to what you've been following. Now you're going to get to see these guys for real.
So let's go ahead and pick up where we went off here. Let me find my spot. I'm reading so many things because I'm so into the moment here. Me too. So after 129 days, Ricky Steamboat gets the title on April 21st, 1984. This last 64 days, Bill, and guess who's back in the picture? Wahoo McDaniel, June 24th, 1984. He gets the title, and this is when they have a creative storyline here. So he only has this for a week this time. On July 1st, 1984, it's vacated, and it was stripped from him because Tully Blanchard interfering in McDaniel's title defense. So by interfering, the title is stripped from him. Haven't seen that one in a while.
So what you're saying is there are new ways for relevancy with this title. Like now not only do you have to be a great wrestler and this character and have this persona, now they're going to throw storylines into it, right? Now there's going to be controversy, and now the, not that we ever lose the year feuds and these long running feuds, but now we know there's another way to get involved in this thing. But you still had to be someone, right? You still had to be relevant. But now there's a new twist in how to become a champion or what causes it. And they held true to the rules, interference, and all those things back then.
So this happened on July 1st, 1984. And there is a redemption period here. A new title tournament is sprung up, and it all culminates here to an end on October 7th. So you have several months here, Bill, where this is a redemption story for Wahoo McDaniel. So he defeats Manny Fernandez in a tournament final for the vacant title. He gets the title back after it's vacated, and this wasn't a month or so, Bill. Several months went here with this vacated title. Wahoo McDaniel's redemption to get the title.
That's that fight, right? There's the story. Like, can he do it? And without knowing the exact verbiage or how the story was told, you had to keep going back. Only 7 days, 14 days. He got hurt. He, all these things. He's gonna, this is Dusty Rhodes 101 booking. You're gonna take this man all the way till he reaches, his goal. And people went along for the ride.
No, you're right. It's just, the storytelling is just so, it's on a whole other level, but it's yet so simple, but yet so great. And I guess that's why I like it,
Yeah. I'm going to put you on the spot. I'm going to change gears on you completely right now. And I'm going to ask you, I want your, just without thinking about it, I want your honest answer, right as I asked the question. Why can't we tell those same stories today?
It's almost as if we've tried to make wrestling a science. I get it, the internet and all that. Like you said, back then, magazines were huge, man. You had to, tape sharing and stuff comes after this, and there's not a way to consume all this back then. But now we have so much wrestling. I get we only have three or four big companies, but still have so much wrestling between them. And it almost seems like we've tried to make it a science and overcomplicated it. Maybe that's a societal thing. I don't know.
That's it. Nope, that's the word. Overcomplicating it. Like making it, to me, the way to make it mean more is do less. These guys are all geniuses at what they did. And I'm going to say it again. Not one time in what we've been breaking down now has there been a triple Lindy. There hasn't been a moonsault. There hasn't been the whirling dervish. There's no suicide dives. There's none of this stuff. They kept you involved within the parameters of that ring. And the biggest thing that's happened is now Tully Blanchard caused the vacating of the title. Why can't we do that again? Like, it's almost because we have great historians and we're almost afraid to try because they think either there's not enough trust in the talent that's there, or they don't think they need to go back to it. But imagine if we did. What we'd be talking about, 5 years.
Crazy. Okay. So, no. So this next thing here is a sad thing because we're going to talk about Magnum TA. Magnum TA is going to get the championship March 23rd, 1985. 120-day run. He then loses to Tully Blanchard. And then once again defeats Tully Blanchard. And this was recognized, and I'll just fast forward it. This is November 28th, 1985. I Quit Steel Cage match. He comes up with the win here. Magnum TA, man. I'll just fast forward it a little bit more. We'll put a bookend on this because this is, in my opinion, this is the end of part 2 of this title. before we start introducing exciting characters like Sting, Lex Luger, the next kind of generation. But Magnum TA, man, he was so damn good. And what happens here is Nikita Koloff, August 17th, 1986, defeated Magnum TA in a best-of-7 series for the vacant title. The title was vacant for attacking... Magnum TA attacked the president of NWA, Bob. What is it? Is it Geigel? I don't remember. Yeah. So he attacked him.
Bob Geigel,
stripped. Yeah. Then he has this amazing 7 series match between Magnum TA and Nikita Koloff. These matches were amazing. So Koloff defeats then later on he's going to defeat Wahoo McDaniel and unify the championship. The championships being NWA Heavyweight Championship into the U.S. title. But man, this best of Series 7 match.
This is the brain trust that was going on back then. Now, this is when, to your point of a little bit earlier, cable's now in full effect. And now we're seeing this. You're watching it, happen in that studio and with the promos and all these things that happen. But just think about it. The best of 7. You have to be some kind of special. One, not to repeat a match, not to repeat the storyline or the way you're going to tell it. Your emotions have got to change. Your physicality's got to change. Your mentality's got to change. And again, it's one of those things, underrated. Go back and watch Nikita and Magnum. Magnum was being built to be the next wrestling god. From my understanding and what I know of the stories and, that getting to talk to people about it, like he, and especially Dusty, like he was being built to be the guy. So this set of 7 was huge. Oh. And I was a big Nikita. Still am, but I was a huge Nikita fan. He was
yes. So let me clean up what I said before. I think I probably made it a little bit confusing. So we just talked about this best of 7 series match. It comes to an end on August 17th, 1986.
Right.
Then he defeats Wahoo McDaniel in September. Then that unifies the NWA National Heavyweight Championship into the U.S. title. So, So after this, after this best of 7 series, this is when the tragedy happens with Magnum TA. He was driving in his Porsche in the rain, lost control, and wrapped the car around a telephone pole. This is it for him. He is,
devastating.
Yeah, he is
devastating.
No, go ahead.
No,
the injury, Bill. He's done.
Well, I just was going to say,
he will never wrestle again.
Yeah,
he will. They question if he'll ever walk again. Right? This is a huge thing in professional wrestling. They saved his life. He almost died. He was paralyzed for months. I mean, his in-ring career was over. And like you just said, he was really being billed. And you go back and you hear people talk about this, people being the wrestlers that were there. He was the next huge thing, like you said.
Yep. He was being groomed to be that guy. And that was one of the times as a fan. And I think for a lot of people, as a fan, you not only were you involved in what they did, this crash and everything that happened to Magnum really got everybody invested in. Now they're investing in the people. Unfortunate circumstances, but this is still the building of wrestling and drawing these people into the suspended belief and the believability of everything that's going on, because that's how strong a character Magnum was, is they knew he was being groomed. He was having these matches. And then for that tragedy to happen, people are like, oh man. But what a super, super positive cat. And everything he went through. And everybody I've spoken to about him or spoken about him has nothing but praise for him and who he was before the crash, and then naturally after the crash. But it's just amazing to just listening to the lineage so far.
Yeah, I think this is a good place to stop. There's and just give it a little bit of a look into the future, I guess we'll say. This WCW it's going to become WCW. There's a couple matches here we'll go over next time. Then this big transition happens. But like you just said, just think about some of the names we've talked about. We've started out with Harley Race, Johnny Valentine, Terry Funk, Paul Jones, Blackjack Mulligan, Bobo Brazil, Ric Flair, Steamboat, Sergeant Slaughter, Jimmy Snuka, Roddy Piper. Then Wahoo McDaniel really has an incredible reign of time here. That's 5 years after chasing this title. And then we have Greg Valentine coming to the plate. Right. This is so significant, man, in wrestling history. And this is a time, just to paint the picture, it's regional. If you're northeast like a Bill DeMott was, you're just reading these things, seeing these things. It's almost like folklore, man. Like you're just hearing these great stories. You may not even be able to watch it.
Yes. We were so behind the times in the North to what was going on, to your point, but it was almost like you had to learn who these guys were because, like I said, all you had was the magazines. And back home in New Jersey, you had Warner Wolf was the sports guy, and Eyewitness News, I think it was Channel 7, but he would dedicate a certain part of his sports show to updating people on what happened in the world of professional wrestling. So it was, and he'd show little clips from the Garden and stuff like that, but we never got to see the South. So when that cable and everything came on, but to your point, it was a regional deal, and look how big it is.
Yep, we talked about cable, and it'll just get bigger from here as we go into this next part. But yeah, let's jump into a couple listener questions before we put a book in on this. I want to make sure we entertain their questions. Bob Horton's cast.
Absolutely.
Okay, so Jake the Snake Roberts has a podcast, Bill. I don't know if you heard the comments that he happened to say about Bret Hart over the last couple days.
No, I didn't.
So somehow it was broke down where Hall of Famer Jake the Snake Roberts was asked to pick his favorite wrestler between Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels. This was his response. Neither. What for? Better performer? Shawn. Bret just gets dull at times. His interviews aren't up to par, I don't think, to what they should be for what position he held. I think his interviews were poor at best. They were part of that era that quit selling things, and just did everything. I will give it to Bret that he did wrestle a lot more than Shawn. Bret, to me, just, oh boy, I'm going to get myself in trouble here. He just wasn't a champion to me. There, I said it. Neither one of them. Wow.
Yeah, that's live, right? But I will say this. I will say this. Jake's not the first guy to say things like that, and so But if you think about this, like Jimmy Hart used to say, the table is round, and so it always comes back again. So imagine what was said, and by no means am I taking sides or agreeing, disagreeing, but imagine how they felt about what Jake was doing. But then I think it's has more validity coming from the guys of the same era, traveling in the same companies and in those same circles. I think when they say stuff like that, there has to be a little bit of validity to it. I'm not sure. Listen, I'll play devil's advocate and say I'm sure Jake meant it to come out a different way, but Jake speaks Jake, just like Bill speaks Bill. So sometimes it comes out different and people, can misconstrue it, but I don't think he made any bones about it. I think he justified his position. What was the report from Bret so far?
Will there be one even? I don't. See, here's the thing. Bret Hart is a great wrestler. He's a great champion. He didn't need to do the things that Jake the Snake Roberts was doing. The champion doesn't have... Okay, so it's a television show, Bill. You have checks and balances. If there's great interviews happening in other rivals, that's great. It doesn't have to be like that on every single match or every single rival or every single... I'm using the word rival,
Right.
This is television. There's checks and balances that happen. Bret Hart doesn't have to go out there and deliver an amazing interview every time. I mean, he just doesn't. He could go out there and have matches. So I think, again, wrestling, when Bret Hart was there, was going through changes again, and Shawn Michaels and all that. I get that. But nevertheless, that's not what he had to do.
Yeah, because you could now, let's be really arrogant and throw Taker into it. Who didn't talk, who didn't wrestle like Shawn, who didn't wrestle like Bret. Right? So it's that changing of the guard. It's a changing of the business a little bit. But to your point, everything back then wasn't cookie cutter. Everybody didn't have to be the same. They had different bodies, they had different hairstyles, they had different athletic abilities and everything. So listen, in sports, if you have a bad offensive day, but you're great on defense, you're having a great day. And so everybody doesn't need to be the best talker.
Today, I don't need to hear Gunther talk all the time. I mean, yeah, he's entertaining. He could hold his own, but I don't need to hear.
They're making
that's
him
not
human now. Yeah.
I don't know. So it gets more drama here to end the episode. Vince McMahon's mustache wants to know what you think about some more drama. So Booker T and Ryback have been going at it here.
Okay.
I just don't. Yeah. I hate even like. Ryback and I have a weird thing. We used to be kind of cool on Twitter. Then he blocked me on Twitter when I was trying, because he's constantly tweeting about how he doesn't get much engagement. And I was trying to give him advice saying, hey, like, and I was explaining the algorithm of Twitter, like literally explaining the algorithm of Twitter. Hey, replies will get you more engagement and get more views if you start an actual thread and you're replying rather than just retweeting. He just doesn't reply to people really. He blocked me. Then I think Vince McMahon's mustache said that he blocked him too because he started chiming in. So I'm really confused about that. Kind of fell for the guy over the years, man. He had a bad outing there in WWE. Rough stuff with CM Punk and just rough stuff with the company of his name and all that. So I'm really not about talking bad about people, and I don't particularly enjoy things like this. But yeah, him and Booker T have been going at it. Ryback called him out for running his mouth and making clueless comments. So it was really talked about that they were going to publicly talk about thing on Booker T's podcast. That was like the big talk. They were going to air it out, kind of, guess, settle it once and for all. It needs to be live and not recorded to play it later, Booker T actually said. The invitation is rescinded for Ryback. Mickey demands for you to come to my show. Says a whole lot you don't really want to come and have a conversation. Here was Ryback's response. Looks like Vince McMahon and Triple H have spoken. Smart move. You're going to look foolish. You could come on my show anytime, live and face-to-face, anytime. And any demands you have will be met for the conversation, blah, blah, blah. I'm not scared like you because I'm not scared like you are because I have the facts. And that's where I'm going to leave it off. So they're going back and forwards at it here, and Vince McMahon's mustache on Twitter wants to know what you think. I don't really think anything about it.
I think, listen, I'm not, again, it goes back to I'm not picking sides. I know here's what I know. What people are saying has happened, right? Whether it's on Twitter or whether it's on the dirt sheets or somebody's talking about it on another podcast. So everybody knows what they think they know.
That's a t-shirt. That's a t-shirt right there.
Here's the
everybody
thing
knows what they think they know.
Do it right.
Yeah.
Good. That's t-shirt number 2. But I feel like when guys and myself included, everybody included, I don't want to use the wrong term, but I'm saying like this, and I'm going to cuss for a minute. When you show your ass on social media, you're not doing it to show your ass, right? So to me, social media is like a text message or an email. You read it the way it's written. You don't know the feeling behind it. You don't know the inclinations or what was really meant, right? You take it at face value. So when all these things fall apart and we start to have Twitter wars, my wrestling mind always goes to first, that's a work. right? They're building to something that's going to happen, and I hope it is, and I hope they both draw huge ratings on their shows and things like that. I'm not a big fan of when it becomes the personal stuff. I'm not a big fan on, you know, bringing other people into it or giving. And here's why I'm not a fan of it, because it gives the wrestling fan, finger quotes for people who can't see what I'm doing, the wrestling fan, it gives them more ammunition to further hate on, critique on, crap on the business, the people that have paved the road, people that are coming back, and all these things. So I, as a group, I think,
Bill, I'm not trying to cut you off, but simply put, it does nothing for the business. It's just a waste of time. Booker T is, I will say, Booker T has done a lot for the business. A lot of respect for Booker T. I don't mind Ryback, but man, I have a hard time going at Booker T after all he's contributed to the business. I mean,
yeah, and I think that's Booker's point to it, and I think the easy, like the low hanging fruit for anybody is let's go for what the people understand, right? So tying Booker into the WWE and being told don't do it, and because it's clear, and so everybody understands. The Silverback Ryan Reeves started his career with me. We share the same birthday.
I like that.
But I've known him for all his time. I have the utmost respect for him. He's gonna his journey's his journey. I don't judge him on that, but at the same time, I'd say, and we said it doesn't belong on social media, because then for the people who have your back, they could think less of you or think more of you, right? And I think that's the problem. It gives people more options to have opinions and to get involved, and then to further stir the pot. So I choose to look at it as a work in wrestling terms, and I hope they both draw huge money when this interview comes. And if they do it that way, I'm gonna say it up front. I told you so. It's still wrestling, and maybe it's one of those best out of 7
maybe
Twitter wars.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll sum up that conversation. Yeah. So hey, this is the end of the episode, but you should buy the T-shirt. The quote on the T-shirt, Bill, I'll let you say it again. It relates to this to me, because use your energy towards something more beneficial.
Yeah. Do what you say what you mean what you do. And for the first time ever, Jeff, I'm going to say this. For the first person who's listening to this, who can send you every name in the order that you mentioned them, and we did it on, I will personally buy them a Bill DeMott t-shirt.
You're talking title reigns.
I'm talking the title reign part. If they give you from beginning to where we ended this episode, and you vouch for it, we'll mention them on the air, and I will personally make sure they get the Bill DeMott, and I'll sign it. I'll sign it, and
I might rig the competition to give me a signature, baby. Sell that thing like people are doing these days. Now that's a heck of a thing, Bill. So yeah, again, Bill's talking about on jefftshirts.com, Bill DeMott Experience shirt. All the proceeds will go to the foundation, which I am not even directly a part of, but I find myself passionate about. Yep. So again, Bill will be in the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame in Waterloo in July. What was the date on it again?
July. Yeah. July.
So if you're going to be anywhere in the area, pick you up a ticket, and you'll see the likes of Bill and several.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a stacked card that's going to be fun.
Come out, say hello, listen to the roundtables. And I am a big fan of meeting everybody face to face. So, and I'm holding you to it. Like if your schedule works out, we're having a good roundtable discussion.
Yeah. Introduce me to the big dogs. Yeah. Vince's mustache, wherever you are in the world, please make your way to Waterloo, Iowa. No, thanks for the questions as always, people, to submit them, and just the conversations. We appreciate you listening. We're still working on the YouTube channel, getting that up and going. The podcast is getting downloads. But yeah, I need to get better about the YouTube, but I did get a bunch of stuff on there, and I'll continue to do so. It's just time, Bill. You know how life is, man.
We'll get there. Yeah. And here's the thing. For years, and you're like this, I know you are, and I've been like this, We used to not worry about the time. We had things to do. We got to get them done. But now I'm glad we start taking life into consideration. And sometimes, because the truth is you can get to it. We will get to these things. And the people know that. And as long as you keep giving them content like this and we keep delivering, they're gonna wait because they know when you say it's gonna happen. But I'm glad you take that time, especially with them babies and as hard as you're working outside of this show, that you take the time and life comes first sometimes, and then we'll get to it. But it'll be there.
Yeah,
we're not going anywhere.
Peek behind the curtains. I also just recently, my contract ended with Wish TV, local news network, Circle City Broadcasting. I was managing a network of 30 plus podcasts, and I have about 5 or 6 on my own. So, yeah, man, I'm always involved in the podcasting game. You can go to Jeff Townsend Media to check out my stuff. Of course, with this podcast, we have BillDeMott.com. The Bill DeMott Experience is available everywhere you listen to podcasts and watch them. Bill's on social media as Bill DeMott, and I'm at Podcast Father. And so next week we'll be back, and we will dive more into the U.S. title, and I'm just so freaking thrilled, Bill. Thank you for spending this time with me every week, man.
Yeah, this is great. Yeah, thank you, brother. This is really good, and now we're going deep. I like when we go into these, series of episodes where we talk about this. So it's really good. Great start. As always, thank you so much for everything you do, brother. And
thank you for the experience, and thank everybody for going along with us on the Bill DeMott Experience. Until next week, keep being you. Keep being great. Don't let